in the NASA outfit there addressing the press, and they've termed the death of General Nkaissery as unfortunate and timely. And of course, the general was once an ODM member, so they feel like they've lost one of their own. But the former Prime Minister there was very clear, saying that the country should remain calm. And at the same time, they are in Mombasa because of their campaign. They're saying they're not going to stop their campaigns. They will continue their campaigns, but they're going to give some sort of a moment of silence because of the death of the general there. President Uhuru Kenyatta, his deputy William Ruto, and the whole Jubilee Brigade are saying that they have suspended, or they've stopped their campaign or their tour of Turkana for today because of that sad news that has shocked so many people in the country. Now, let me just hear from you, Delano, before we talk about the elections and how his death has come at a very critical moment. You're a person who has had a lot of experience in the security sector. How best would you choose to remember General Nkaissery?
We choose to remember him as a stalwart leader, a man of great confidence, a man who was determined to execute his office in its entirety. We choose to remember him as somebody who had empathy towards the people who are serving under him. He loved his people. He was approachable, as much as he was a very senior military officer, but he's a man who united the security agencies and divisions in Kenya under one command. That's one thing that will be remembered. In his tenure, he was able to help improve the entire communications structure of the joint and multi-agency forces, and we saw that he has left a legacy that is unparalleled in terms of, within a short space of time, being able to fix things that previously had not been fixed since independence. So Major General, the late Nkaissery, was a determined individual. He was a very determined individual. He was available both to the common man and both to the man of high estate. He was available to genders. He was available to children. I remember one particular incident was when he was actually doing the guard of honor at KICC for the St. John's, I think it was the first aid youngsters, the little children, and he's really doing a very regal parade of honor with these very little children. So he had that empathy, and he will be greatly missed. So certainly our condolences from Protective and Safety Association of Kenya to his entire family, to the Maasai community, and to the wider community in security at large across the nation. We will miss him.
Thank you for that. George, you're also a person from the security sector. So is this a big blow to the security of this country? We all know that his appointment came right after that of Joseph Nkaissery. We knew what was happening in the country. There were bombings left, right, and center. So do you think, as much as he has brought things under control, is it a big blow to the security sector, his death?
It's a big blow, going by the way he performed his duties. General Nkaissery had a very illustrious career in the military in a span of 20 years, only blotted when he was mentioned in the TGRC report about how he handled the Operation Nyundo down in West Pokot. That is just one blot. But generally, if you look at the way the general performed his duties, he came in after a lot of was happening in terms of terror attacks within the city. He took over from Olelenku, and during his span in office, we've seen a reduction of terror attacks in the country, especially in the cities. We can't say that he actually eliminated terrorism, but at least we've seen a reduction of attacks. And if you look at the general performance of the agencies, as my friend here said, he brought all the agencies together. Initially we were seeing a lot of sibling rivalry between the agencies. You'll find that the military were pulling in one direction, the police, APs, everybody. And then this he brought under control. And I think we should allow him for that. And also, he improved mobility in the police. As much as we say that the APCs that were brought in are not actually effective, but I think that was it took the right decision, brought equipment to the police, and as we speak, we are seeing better performance in the police as opposed to what we witnessed earlier when Olelenku was in charge. So I think generally his performance has actually seen a reduction of crime in the country. Not only terrorism, but crime in the country.
In the country.
Yeah.
Many thanks, George, for that. One of his famous quotes, Mohammed, is that he has always referred to himself as a general. He has always said that once a general, always a general. And after the death of William Olentimama and the death of Saitoti, people saw him as some sort of a de facto leader of the Maasai community. So how blow is this to the Ma community? That is his death.
Well, I think lately he withdrew from the political front.
Yes.
And he was more doing his job in his office, which actually did not allow him really to participate in politics directly. And sometimes whatever he has said has been misinterpreted or interpreted to fit a particular, narrative. That has happened. But he was a very quiet man. Do you know this? I mean, he was not somebody who was gleaning the publicity. He was not a publicity seeker as such. Soft-spoken, firm, and he was a professional. So sometimes you feel that, was he really right to become a politician? Sometimes I find that him, as under the scheme now, under the new constitution, his position as a Secretary of State for Interior fits him very well, more than as an MP. And I think he made a very good choice because, okay, he was a people's person, and we have all said about this, that he was down to earth, he had a common touch, he touched people from all countries, and his friends all over the country, by the way, or different cadres, not necessarily, and he was not puffed up. Some of these guys who got positions or they've got money and then they and you don't understand why they are puffed up. You really don't understand, is that they are small minds. So he was a very intense person, and whenever you met him, and you see, Yusuf, normally when people die, people say good things about them. But I think all of us, including the nation, is speaking from the heart. Whoever met that man, he was touched by that man. I was touched by his modesty, by his simplicity, by his efficiency. He was able to bring together the minds in this, which is not an easy question, to try and cobble them together and say that, look, we've got a security challenge here, and all of us have to have one plan. He ran a tight ship. He ran a very efficient ministry. And as I said earlier, although, we all have got our faults, none of us have lived a life which is actually not bloated, as my colleague here has mentioned. But if you look comparatively with the others, for instance, you never had him being mentioned negatively in the press because of stealing or bribery.
The various scandals in the country.
All the various scandals in this country.
Yeah.
He was an honorable man.
Clearly, Mohammed, you have a lot to say, and we'll talk so much in this program. Of course, his firmness and his effectiveness comes from the discipline he received from the forces where he served as a general. And former President Daniel Arap Moi has sent his message of condolence to the President Uhuru Kenyatta, of course, his family, people of Kenya, and the Maasai community at large, following the untimely death of Cabinet Secretary General Retired Joseph Nkaissery. Now, in his message, the former president said he learned of the death of Nkaissery, which of course shocked him, and is still in disbelief. They described Nkaissery as a man who served this country with exceptional energy and dedication. Mzee Moi said the cruel hand of death has robbed the country one of our most illustrious sons. He prayed to God to give Nkaissery's family necessary fortitude to bear the loss. Of course, that is the message from retired President, of course, Daniel Arap Moi there. Let me bring you in, Delano, once again. Let's go back to the critical moment I was talking about. We're just about 31 days shy away from the general election. We've seen the ruling yesterday from the courts, and today a big blow to the government, of course, to the country as well. So will this interfere, with the morale of the people out there as far as the election is concerned?
There is absolutely no interference in terms of how the security structure works within this nation. Contingency plans had been put in place to take care of any eventuality with regards to the upcoming general elections. And contingency plans, as you've heard, executed by His Excellency, the President of the country, were executed, and he did announce the replacement of our, sadly, demised cabinet secretary with an acting cabinet secretary in the form of CS Fred Matiang'i.
Yeah.
So the security agencies have always had contingency plans, or what we would call a what-if analysis is always done, and we look at the different threats, we look at the different risks, and based on that threat and risk analysis, then different contingency plans are put in place. So there are several contingency plans. Of course, those cannot be shared on air in terms of all the activities within the security community. However, in this particular case, which was one of the, it's what we would call an aggravated risk or threat, what if we don't have a CS for Interior, then of course there is a plan that is put in place. Then we would need to replace as soon as possible, as much as we continue, whether it's even during the course of the elections. So with 30 days to the elections, all plans are in place from a security perspective. Nothing changes. It is going to be, as stated by the president, as stated by the leader of opposition, a very peaceful election.
Before I come to you, George, let me just take this now. Some breaking news. Of course, we are receiving from the coast, and that is in Mombasa, at least 9 people have been killed by suspected Al-Shabaab fighters in Lamu. Now, security sources say the incident happened last night at Jima village in Lamu West. Officials say police are responding to the incident. In his briefing, the president alluded to an incident in the country but did not elaborate. We can now speak to our coast reporter, Francis Ontomwa, on this developing story. Francis, we've just seen the NASA leader talking there at the coast, and there's also, of course, this other story that is coming up from Lamu. What more can you tell us?
Well, Yusuf, a couple of minutes ago, we've heard Prime Minister Raila Odinga speaking about the death of Nkaissery. But in the wake of the death of Nkaissery, the insecurity monster actually has reared its head again in Lamu County, and specifically Lamu West. And the reports we are getting on the ground is that 9 people could have perished in an attack that was orchestrated last night, not far from Pandangoe area, that also witnessed 3 officers dying the other day. And therefore, it looks like Lamu West is now on the spot this time around. And of course, these attacks also believed to have been orchestrated by the Al-Shabaab militants. Well, around Pandangoe area, we've been reporting it's not new actually to this attack, because even back in 2014 when there was the Mpeketoni skirmishes, there was also another attack at Pandangoe area, making it quite a volatile area. And this time around, it looks like this insecurity headache is now stretching even to Lamu West, because largely what has been volatile has been the northern part of Lamu, which has of course been having also all manner of all sorts of insecurity actually. And why it is even more riskier, very important really to combat what is coming from these Al-Shabaab militants, it is the fact that there are now landmines that are actually planted at different spots, especially in northern Lamu, and that area has actually been declared an operational base by security forces. And of course, a couple of days ago, we had the report, of course, the county coordinator, the regional coordinator for Coast here, Nelson Marwa, speaking about the likelihood of bombing the Boni forest, and that looks like he said that they're not really ruling out that as being an option. And the other day we got reports that there were reports that there could have been a bombing of a section of Boni forest. Therefore, the very latest coming from that part of Kenya, Lamu West, is the fact that some 9 people could have perished last night, and the reports we are getting that they could have actually have been beheaded by what is suspected to be these attacks, because there has been a lull, quite a huge lull in the last couple of months. We've not witnessed any of this, but now that actually looking back in a space of 1 month, there have been like a dozen+ deaths, all coming off from the county of Lamu, and especially the northern part of Lamu. We've had security apparatus here, those who are heading the Linda Boni operation, of course, exuding confidence and actually stating that they are making some headway, they are making some successes, but looks like they have not really neutered the insecurity scare that is in Lamu, and that is why we are witnessing a new fresh of attacks. And the attacks that we've been reporting have actually involved both security apparatus and also members, rather civilians also involved in this attack. And these civilians that have been involved in these attacks have largely been those who are being transported by security machines from one area to another. You will keep in mind the fact that in the northern part of Lamu especially, transport is a huge challenge, and therefore civilians have to, of course, depend on security apparatus to move them from one place to another. And that is why whenever such attacks happen, you will hear that they have involved not only the security forces, but also members of the public, rather.
Omar, one final question. Of course, the Interior Minister has been very silent about this. It's understandable because of what happened today. But now that they're silent and we have a new man at the docket, that is the Education Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, and they've already, as I already told you, they're silent, and it's understandable. Have you managed to speak perhaps to some of the commanders on the ground, and what are some of the inroads they're making now? Is the operation on, actually, the Boni Forest?
Well, the last update that we heard from Lamu came from the County Commissioner, Joseph Nkaissery, speaking of how they have now deployed more officers, especially to Pandango area that has witnessed the latest attacks. And he has said that he has been telling us, actually, that they are trying to take charge of affairs. But, of course, that taking charge of affairs has now been put to test, given that we have reports of another attack that happened last night. And, therefore, of course, a huge challenge that is on the hands of security apparatus from that part of the country. But largely, we've been also speaking to residents in that particular area around Mpeketoni area, of course, which witnessed the worst ever attack in 2014. And they have been raising security concerns, saying that they feel actually they have been left actually to fight for their lives down there. And that is why the challenge actually rests still with security apparatus to keep reassuring residents there. And not only reassuring, but also taking charge of affairs, because the Al-Shabaab militants are actually looking like they are making another comeback in that part of the country. And, of course, that has to be arrested. And now that, of course, a new man is in charge of affairs, we threw that question actually to the Right Honorable Raila Odinga on his thoughts actually on how he feels the docket changes now hands from the late Nkaissery to Fred Matiang'i. And he said that important will be the rule and the constitution to be followed while enforcing, of course, security issues down actually in the entire country. And at this particular juncture, now that there is a new focus down in Lamu, we expect all security apparatus from top to bottom actually to train focus now afresh in Lamu.
Many thanks, Francis Otomo, for that comprehensive update on the Lamu attack there. Now, let me just come back to you once again, Akilu. The attack there in Lamu, does this signal some sort of fresh threat from the Al-Shabaab?
What we have here is we have an existing threat. It's not a fresh threat. It's been an existing threat. You may be aware that currently there are operations that are going on in northeastern Kenya, in the Mandera area, as well as in this whole entire coastal region surrounding the Lamu area and the Boni Forest. There's also an operation taking place currently in the Laikipia area.
Yes.
So this is a joint agency operation, and certainly the issue is being or is undergoing address as we speak. However, that said, we have to remember one thing. We are in a war against terror. Regardless of the national elections, regardless of the other challenges we may be facing as a country, we cannot stand down from our level of preparedness, our level of alertness, and always being prepared that the enemy, this is not a friendly enemy. This is an enemy who has in the past a great history in terms of trying to attempt to kill innocent Kenyans, as demonstrated in the attack that has occurred over last night and into today morning. Therefore, it is our mandate and it is our responsibility as an entire nation that we should provide information. Before those Al-Shabaab crossed all the way from the border through the forest to get to this particular place where they have attacked, there were Kenyans that saw them. Why did these Kenyans not alert security forces? In many of the cases where IEDs have been planted under roads in Mandera, there are people who saw people digging the roads. Why did those Kenyans not alert security agencies or security forces? We are going to have to ask ourselves the very hard questions. As Kenyans, do we really care about our fellow Kenyans? Do we really love our fellow Kenyans? Because that information will save lives. And it's very impossible for an enemy to cross through tens of kilometers of places where they're being seen quite much in the open, and then attack within Kenya, and then go back and nobody sees where they are or maybe notices who they are. So it's our responsibility right now, even as we approach with 30 days coming to the general elections, that we become very serious about this matter of terror. Terror is a global threat. We see these attacks in Europe, attacks in the UK, attacks in the US, attacks, plenty of attacks, daily basis in the Middle East. But we need to start now also ramping up and amplifying the volume in in terms of not just alertness, preparedness. We need to equip ourselves. We need to equip our security forces even more. And generally, as a nation, we need to come together at this time to unite. Yes, it's a sad moment. Unfortunately, we've just lost the person who was leading and heading the docket for the CS Interior. But at this particular junction, it's also a time for us to call upon our patriotic and our nationalistic sense of duty and to with fervor execute and say, I will be my brother's keeper. Because at the current moment, I'm afraid we're not doing that.
George, of course, we know these militants to be very tech-savvy.
Yes.
They know everything that is happening in the country. And from the documentaries, from the propagandas that they have been releasing, do you think this attack is some sort of, some sort of veiled message to the country? And the Education CS is now on top of the security docket. Do you think it's about time that he jumps into action and show some sort of leadership quality here that has been left by the General Nkaissery, the General Nkaissery?
Yusuf, this attack happening in Lamu, when we've been having an operational learning for more than a year, actually calls to question the kind of strategies that you are using down there in Boni. Personally, I've operated in Boni, and this is a very vast area, starting from Gariseni down up to Kiunga. And you'll find that the numbers that we are talking about 200 militants who attacked Pandanguo police station. Yesterday, there was another attack, and 9 people were killed. We are having an operation, an interagency operation. The KDF are there, we have the GSU. And if you ask me, I have been around the country during my operation in the service, and one of the most protected areas has always been Lamu.
Yes.
Because starting from Okoe, where we have a permanent GSU camp from 1973, you come from Okoe, you move down along the Kiunga Road, you get to a place known as Magogoni. Magogoni, we have a naval base. Not only KDF naval base, we have a marine base, US marine base. From Magogoni, you go to Baragoi. Baragoni, we have a KDF base, 66 artillery, all the way down to Kiunga. Also in Kiunga, we have a military base, we have a GSU base, and then when you cross
so basically, it's a well-guarded area.
Well-guarded area. You
so
cross
the question
border,
is, why do we see these things happening?
You go to Raskambon. Raskambon, we also have a KDF base and the Somali National Army base.
Yes.
Now, how these people could cross the border? So what I'm trying to bring out here clearly is that we are not looking at people or insurgencies who are crossing the border to come and carry out attacks in the country. So I'm looking at what he's saying. We have local support for these militants. We have people within our borders who are actually members of Al-Shabaab and are carrying out these attacks. Where is popular intelligence? He is asking that. Popular intelligence is the kind of intel that is given by the community. We brought up the Manyumba Kumi initiative. Is it working? Because no attack can be planned and executed without involvement of movement of people, and these people are seen. Did we have this intel? Matiang'i has taken over a very hot seat. The only disadvantage that he has, he does not have experience of handling security matters.
And of course,
as opposed to General Nkaissery,
the fact that he has also another ministry to run.
He also has another ministry to run. But we have been told that he's in acting capacity. Let's not make the mistakes that we did earlier when we appointed Olelenku, who did not have experience to deal with matters of security, handling a docket that is very sensitive to this country. So I think the president should move with speed, appoint a person who has both theory and practical experience of handling security matters, as General Nkaissery had. Because if you look at the short time that we had Nkaissery as the Minister for Interior, in charge of internal security, we saw we saw a reduction of terror attacks in the country. So I don't think that we should waste a lot of time waiting to appoint, to have Matiang'i in acting capacity, whereas we are having attacks coming out every other day. We are seeing a resurging Al-Shabaab, especially in the Boni forest. And when we talk about a terror group, these are more than 20 cells.
Yes.
This is not one cell. And if we look at it in the conventional army structures, we are talking about 2 companies, 200 people. These are 2 companies. And I believe that we are having so many cells of Al-Shabaab in Boni Forest, and we need to take action now.
Kelo, clearly it seems we are fighting some sort of an enemy within. So do you think the security docket have their work cut out for them in terms of winning the hearts and minds of the local communities in these areas that are being hit by the attackers every now and then?
I believe the security community in this nation is extremely strong. It's extremely well trained, as you've already heard from my colleague over here. Yeah. And indeed, there's a lot that is already happening. And from what is happening currently, what we do need is we need for every Kenyan to participate so that we build as a nation. We build as one unit. It should not be those guys in security versus us guys who are the civilians. It should be we are all brothers and sisters belonging to one nation. Let's come together. Let's maintain peace. Let's be able to say, look, I noticed there's something going wrong. If you travel abroad, for example, in the United States of America, you land at the airport and you get this message. They say, if you suspect anything, if you think that there's something wrong, kindly point it out to anybody who is dressed in this particular uniform. And so that security then becomes a responsibility for us all. Of course, the security agencies and forces have the primary responsibility to make sure that they secure themselves. But we personally and individually also have a responsibility, that is to say, I will take care of my personal security. That's why when you go home, there's a padlock that you put on your door to make sure that you've locked your door properly or your gate properly before anything else occurs. These things can save lives. And that's why we're saying it's not just restricted just to the security community. We also have to take responsibility in the nation for security, not only for our own personal lives, but we also need to be our brother's keeper. We need to look at our neighbor and say, if you see some strange person jumping over your neighbor's fence, do you just continue business as usual and you say, no, the thieves are in my neighbor's place? Or do you actually raise the alarm and say that, okay, there's something else going wrong over here? The threat of terror is not a Kenyan problem. The threat of radicalized individuals is not a Kenyan problem. It's a global problem. And the problem is not going away. We've seen escalations of these attacks all around the world. And this is a time when we, from a Kenyan perspective, especially during this sensitive time, the enemy will always want to try and attack you when you're distracted. And as much as the general elections is an extremely vital and important aspect, constitutionally mandated, that must take place, we must do probably like what the Bible talks about in the book of Nehemiah, which is build on one side and keep a sword on the other hand from a security perspective, so that you're building the nation, but you're also protecting what you're building so that it is not torn down by the enemies of this nation.
Thank you for that, George. We've seen so many incidents of mass graves, in northern Kenya, some sort of extrajudicial killings, happening left, right, and center. So do you think these are some of the issues that might make the local communities we're talking about to be, a bit antagonized and feel that they should not, share the critical information that we need in the security docket?
I think one area that the late General Nkaissery did not handle well was this issue of extrajudicial killings. We never saw him coming out and talking about these matters. As much as we are seeing them on social media, we are seeing this on the media, all over, people are talking about extrajudicial killings. He did not handle this well. He did not manage this. And remember, when you have a community that does not support you on the ground, then definitely you're bound to fail. And I think if you look generally, the way people view the security forces in Kenya, and that is why in the new constitution, we changed the police force to a police service. Yeah. We wanted it to be service, people-oriented, people-friendly. And whenever you go, where you operate, and you find that people are not willing to give you information, it means there's some disconnect between the people and the police or the security agencies. And this is exactly what is ailing us. As I've told you, I've operated in Lamu, I've operated in Mandera, and it's very difficult to you to have people coming in and voluntarily giving you information. The reason they believe that the police or the security agencies are there not to protect them, but they are there to fight them. And I think one of the reasons why it's very difficult for us to get information from the people is this issue of extrajudicial killings. And I think we need to change the way we operate in these communities, because let's have community policing, let's bring the people close to us, and let's get popular intelligence. And I can assure you, without popular intelligence, we are not going to win this war against terrorism, especially in northern Kenya and the coastal area in general. So I think this issue of mass graves, at the end of the day, it's antagonizing people. Yeah. They feel like the security forces are there not to protect them.
Many thanks, George, for that. It's unfortunate we're discussing this issue and we've just lost our general. That is the Interior Cabinet Secretary, Joseph Nkaissery, who lost his life this morning while receiving treatment at Karen Hospital. His body was moved later on to the Lee Funeral Home. For now, let's join our reporter, Duncan Khambo, who's coming to us live from the late Cabinet Secretary's home in Karen. Now, Khambo, if you could hear me, how is the mood like on the ground?